welcome to another Flip Talk podcast, episode 13. We have myself, KUDOS, and my guest for the day is Amanda. I'm very excited to have Amanda on. I'm excited to hear everything you have to say. How are you doing today, by the way?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Excited to do another podcast. I've been wanting to bring you on for a couple weeks now, so I'm excited we were able to schedule it for today.
I know, I'm glad. Life gets crazy sometimes, so I'm glad I'm here now.
Yes. So, Amanda, for the viewers, let's tell them a little bit about yourself and what you currently do.
Yeah, where do I start? So, I am a mom. That's what my life consists of now, taking care of my son. He's 6, but I say I live my life through him now because I'm like his chauffeur, his cook, just driving him everywhere. But pretty much who I am, I'm just a busy mom, follower of Christ, who has adjusted her life to match what I've evolved into. So I'm a teacher. I used to be a banker. And yeah, there's so many different routes that I can go with that question, but I'm a little bit of everything. I'm into fitness, finance, mom, teacher. Yeah.
So, sounds like you got a little bit of entrepreneur in you, where you're trying different little things once in a while, right? But tell me a little bit where you grew up.
Yeah, so I was born in Dominican Republic, and I used to come when I was little over here, um, just to visit my cousins and stuff. But I used to go back and just go to school there. But when I was 12, my dad passed away, unfortunately. So my mom and I decided to come and be closer to family. Most of them were here. So that was my transition from Dominican Republic to here. And then when I came here, I had a rough time as far as adjusting to culture. It was very different life in DR than it was here. Even from leaving all my friends, not just mourning the death of my father at that time, but also dealing with puberty, and also a new culture, new language, new friends. The way that school was here was very different. So I had a hard time transitioning and adjusting just to living here in general and then having to start over. So that always drove me to being busy and wanting to like becoming very ambitious. Just staying busy was like my main focus, so that I can kind of like my escape, so that I can stay away from all my problems and stuff. So that started my transition on finance. So I went to school. I started working full time when I was 16, cheating the system. You know, when they give you that green paper that you're literally legal to work?
Oh yeah. Like,
Yeah, like the work permit thing, when you're a teenager. So I had that, and I started working full time, tricking two stores, Guess and Charlotte Russe. So that transitioned me into getting to college. So I studied finance. I became an accountant. Then I was working for JP Morgan Chase as a private client banker. I did that for some years, but then I decided to fulfill my purpose, which was teaching. And now, um, going into teaching with how everything is going in the education system, I decided to quit public school teaching and I opened my own homeschool center.
wow.
So that is what I'm doing now. So it's a little bit of the transition in my life, going into finance, teaching, and then motherhood, and having my own homeschool center where I get to teach um, children real quality education, and you know that in a holistic way. So we teach social emotional learning, character building, and also academics, including the STEM subjects. Yeah.
Wow. Is so how many kids are you dealing with as far as teaching?
Yeah, so I started very small, home based. I have about 12 students now. I literally started with two,
Hmm.
including my son. I took my son out of school and just decided to homeschool him. But then I literally had to slow myself down because I have so many people interested, but I just don't have the capacity. So it's a good problem to have.
Hmm.
So I'm expanding as fast as I can, but right now I have 12 students because I'm doing it all. I'm doing administration, the teaching, the planning. And I am before I bring in a team, I have another person that's helping me with marketing and things like that and the website. But I'm very picky and I have a very clear vision on what I want. So I am taking my time in building a team that live out my vision.
Definitely. I like that. I like that you're not taking on so many students because I feel like something with our education system that can improve is that they fill the classrooms up with like 20, 30 students minimum, right? Sometimes it could be more. And it's just one or two teachers. And I don't think that's enough to work on personal development. So I like that you kind of incorporate just 12 students and just keep it at 12 for now because you're like, this is all I could take on right now.
No, yeah, I agree. My model is different too. So I have 12 students, but like the actual learning, um, it's in groups of five. So their core subjects, math, reading, writing, spelling, it's just five of them at a time, while the other ones are doing centers or the challenges of the day and things like that. Because I believe in one-to-one, very intimate education and allowing the kid to explore and learn in their own way. As a teacher who taught in the classroom at one point, especially in the bilingual program, I had 34 students with one assistant. So, as much as I wanted to give, it was almost impossible for me to give what the students deserved because they're so overcrowded. And it was very frustrating to work in an environment like that.
Definitely. Yeah, I could only imagine. I do want to touch on a little bit about like you moving around. So, you went from Dominican Republic to New
Yeah.
York and then to Florida, right? So it's like how do you adapt to that? Because I know it's a struggle at first. Sometimes you have to look at the weather, sometimes you have to look at your friends and family that are around you, just the resources around you. Sometimes you move to certain areas where you need a car to move around, right? So how did you transition and how did that impact your life?
So it has allowed me to really build my character because, like, for example, the transition, the toughest one was when I moved from Dominican Republic here. And I'd say it's the toughest because I was dealing with a lot at the time. Like my father, when he passed, it was very unexpected. He literally got sick on a Sunday and he passed on a Tuesday. So it was literally like a 4 day journey to process. I just lost my hero, my dad was everything to me. Until this day, the relationship that I had with him in the first 12 years of my life, like advice and conversations that I would have with him still resonates with me and drive me to even making decisions to this day. So that was the hardest transition for me. But honestly, the support system, I think coming from a traditional home where both of my mom was a stay-at-home mom until my dad passed, and then she started to work. So having my mom there and seeing even at home how hard she worked by having all the meals, like making sure everything, my dad would go to work, but he would never have to worry about are any bills paid. All of that really built like a strong foundation for me to be independent and to be confident of anything that I wanted to do. So that helped with transitioning from Dominican Republic to the United States and sticking true to who I was. Because when I got here, um, I got bullied a lot because I just was different and I didn't give in to hanging out or cutting class and all the things that the kids wanted me to do at the time that in Dominican Republic where I was not even talked about at that time in being 12. Um to give you a very raw example, I have this incident where like literally in my class, I think it was 7th grade, because I also came mid-year.
Oh
So I
wow.
was the new
Mhm.
girl when everybody was
All
already
eyes on you.
established.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I came in January after the Christmas break, so that was tough alone. Um, and they were passing out a condom,
Oh
like
wow.
throwing it around, and it got to me, and I was like, "What is this?" And the whole class started laughing because it just wasn't the culture and what I was used to. And I mean, I was 12. When I was 12 in the Dominican Republic, I was still worrying about games and playing with dolls, and it was just different. I was not there, so that was like a shock to me. I got home that day and I was like, wow, like this is really different, just that one incident. But the upbringing that I had and the love for authenticity and just the confidence brought me through those hard times and didn't break me. So I am very grateful for my mom and my dad who believed and really just allow me to be me and be creative and explore life and just be confident in myself. So that brought me through that. So I was able to get a job. I bought my first car in Yonkers. I used to take the bus everywhere to school and high school, but I saved while I worked my 2 part-time jobs full-time during high school, after school. Um, I saved $8,000, and then I
Nice.
bought my first Honda Civic right out of high school. And then I got myself a job in the Galleria Mall in White Plains. Um, and then saved through there. Then I got myself into finance and started working for JP Morgan Chase as a private client banker. So that was that. That was all in New York. And during that whole time, it was tough because I went to school full time. I worked full time. I also had my personal life going on. So managing that, I think, came back to seeing how hard my dad worked, seeing how hard my mom worked, but also how they still had time to live in the moment. So I was able to do all of that. And then COVID happened, right? 2000 when was it? 2020?
2020. Yeah. 20.
Yeah, when it
Mhm.
happened, and life in New York was not it for me for what I wanted. So I started to have a lot of trouble in this where I worked and the people that I associated myself with, because I was going against what the crowd was doing at the moment and what everybody was saying. And to be specific, for example, they started pushing and talking about teaching things at work where I wasn't okay with teaching my age group of students. Um, so at work, I was starting to be known as the black sheep, pretty much, the person going
Yeah.
against the narrative.
Mhm.
Um, and before they fired me or let me go because I wasn't going to get vaccinated and all these things, I decided to
Mm.
just pick up and move to Florida, where the economy was running and things were going in a different direction for what I wanted at that time. The transition from New York to Florida was very smooth, but also tough, because when I got here, I transferred my New York teaching license to Florida and I got a job, but I also quit mid-year because of the things that were being infiltrated into the education system. I got fed up and I'm like, this goes against all my morals. I'm not doing it. So now I'm just doing my own thing. I'm in the process of opening up my actual building, homeschool center, so that I can do what I believe my calling is. But the transition has been good. I've been, like I said, I prepared myself in a way where, like, Florida, if you don't drive, it's very hard. Um,
Yes.
but thankfully, I taught myself. I paid somebody to teach me how to drive when I was a teenager. I got my car. I've been very independent and kind of positioned myself to be successful no matter where I go, and to stay authentic to who I am.
Definitely.
I don't know if that answered the question. Sorry.
No, no, you definitely did. I definitely agree with everything you're saying, and I feel like one of your biggest strengths is not sticking to the norm. As far as like, if somebody tells you this is how it has to be done, and it doesn't make sense to you, you're not gonna agree with them. And
Yeah.
I feel like you need to have tough skin in life, and it seems like you developed that as a kid because maybe it came from the morals of your parents, you know, of your dad and mom, where they were teaching you, you know, like this is how you have to do things, this is how to be respectful, right? But when you came to school in New York, you're seeing all these crazy things that are happening, and instead of you saying, oh, let me just fit in, you're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I know where I came from, I know what's right, what's wrong. And if that's shown throughout your life, right, where, you know, it's happening in your career, it's happened to where, you know, you transition so many times, and it's like you're working at the school, and then you're like, no, it's not working out for me, you know, the bank's not working out for me. And it's not about you being rebellious, it's about you sticking true to yourself. And a lot of people don't do that, so definitely stick to that. I think it's more of your gut feeling kind of thing,
Right.
where it just doesn't feel right, you're not doing it, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm big on is authenticity. Like, be who you're called to be, regardless of the cost, right? Um, and many times I'm looked at as like you're crazy. Like when I left Chase, for example, I was at the peak of my career there. You know, six figures income, and I took a huge pay cut just to go into teaching. But I knew what I wanted and the reason why I was doing it. That was very clear to me, the why. And people were like, "You're crazy. Why are you leaving? You know, if you keep going, you're gonna be a financial advisor soon." I'm like, okay, great. The money is one thing, and yes, it's needed in life. But for me, it's purpose and the calling that I feel that I have. So authenticity has always been like staying true to my core and my morals has always been huge for me and has led really every decision that I've made in my life.
yeah, I definitely agree. You know, that's how you have to live your life, and it's crazy because a lot of people end up in that situation where, let's say you go to school for an endless amount of years, and you get into this career where you are making six figures a year. You know, you are living a comfortable life, and then you realize you don't like the profession. So it's like, what do you do then? Is like, do you just stick there and be miserable for the next 20, 30 years, and that's gonna reciprocate with your, you know, coworkers and the people you're working with? Like at the bank, you have to deal with customers, but you also have to deal with your coworkers. So it's gonna show if
Yeah.
you're not comfortable there. So instead of you sticking there and just saying like, I guess I'll do this and that, get the vaccine, this and that, you chose to, you know, move yourself from that scenario where you relocated. You know, you went to a whole different field where it's a pay cut, but, you know, deep down you knew that was what was your passion. And it kind of is, because even though it didn't work out at that school you were in, now you're working on building your own establishment, and you're still within the field. So I don't think that transition was a negative one.
Yeah. No, it was definitely I would say like an answer to a calling. I literally feel that God put it in my heart to, especially with what I see in the world happening in the education system, literally being broken down and the biggest monopoly of all, if you ask me. That's a whole nother subject. But
Yeah.
I literally feel like I cannot just sit there and let things happen, but I'm going to build an outlet where I can be a wall to that system in one way, shape, or form, and fight it with good in my way, because it's like evil against good. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
No, yeah, this is it's kind of like you have religion, but then you have your self morals,
Yeah.
where you decide what makes you happy, but then you use your faith in between to kind of balance it, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, like committing a crime, you know, like committing a crime is like a big subject, because a lot of times people is like, oh, you know, committing crime is bad, and it's like it's against religion, right? But then sometimes when you look at certain scenarios, you know, the person maybe committed the crime because they're trying to like take care of a loved one,
Yeah.
there's something behind it where it's very deep, right, in their life. So that's always been something where you have to try to balance, and I feel like everybody goes to that in life, regardless if you're religious or not. I just feel like you need to find that balance of what your morals are and what you believe in, because at the end of the day, the biggest thing in life is just kind of like, what is our interpretation of our existence, right? Like
Yeah.
why are we here? What are we meant to do? And maybe you could tell me a little bit about that, like for yourself. I know it's a big question, but maybe where do you stand on that?
As far as like what is our purpose?
Yeah. Like, what do you think is our purpose in life?
It's a very deep question.
Yeah.
Um, but I can speak literally from my own experience, right? Based on what I've gone through.
Correct.
Um, so like I said, I grew up in a very traditional home, right? Mom, stay-at-home mom, dad working full time, the provider. Um, they were Catholic, right? Very religious. My mom is as Catholic as they get till this day. Um, but I've always, so I knew of like God and a creator, but I was never really into it myself. I always had questions. That's what my whole life comes down to, is asking questions, like with the whole COVID thing too. I just have questions about the vaccine. Allow me to ask it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't just need to get it. But that makes me a rebel and like an outsider
Mm-hmm.
always. So the same thing with like religion and like finding purpose and a calling in life. I grew up in a very religious home, um, to an extent, especially from my mom's side. But then as I got older, I'm like, you know what? I focus on finance and money and building my empire. I got into finance and all these things. And then as I just experienced different things in life, I started, and things were going great, like at Chase, like I said, six figures, promotions happening, everything going well. But I still felt a void. Like I wasn't really doing anything meaningful in life. Um, like what is all of this for, right? That was my question. What's the point? How am I making someone else's life better, by just accumulating for myself? So that started my whole journey of asking questions like, why am I here? What makes me happy? Who am I, right? And then around 2016, when I got pregnant with my son, very unexpectedly, that's when I really started honing down on what is life, right? Um, I found myself going through what I now know to be godly sorrow, which is when, biblically speaking, when you go through, God allows you to go through, these feelings of almost like depression and shame and all these things, um, so that you can answer his calling. So I started to going through that and I'm like, why am I feeling so down, depressed in this void when I have money, like my finances are in check, relationship, everything is good. Everybody's happy for this baby that I'm having, yet I feel so dark and in such a funk. Um, so I experienced that a lot for quite some time. Then I met this girl. Her name is Yaren, and she was a little angel to me. She literally preached to me. She read the Bible to me, in a very unexpected setting. That's another long story, but she came in that day into Chase. I was working at Chase at that time, just to speak to me. I never know her, nothing, but she said she needed to speak to somebody in there, and it happened to be me. So I brought her into my office, and I literally, with this stranger, just started to cry because of her sweet words of encouragement that I so deeply needed to hear. Um, and they were also harsh words, right? Like kind of like a double-edged sword. Like when something is being exposed, but you're also being freed from that thing that you're feeling. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Um, but she spoke to me, she preached to me, she read the Bible, and then I'm like, you know what? I want to be like that girl, and I want her joy and how like she has this brightness to her. And if that comes by reading this book, the Bible that she's talking about, and that, I've always had in my life some way with my mom, but I never really dove into it myself. Let me just get into it. So I started reading the Bible, and slowly bad habits that I had just started to change. I started to do a lot more self-examining. Like, whoa, that wasn't right, or maybe I should just put my pride aside and do this, or what would Jesus do here? And like, kind of like self-examination all the time, which improved my character. And just allowed me to see life through a different filter. And through that growth and development, that's when I really took the boldness of, wait, I need to do more in life for God's kingdom. I need to serve people instead of being a go-getter. I'm gonna be a go-giver and give more, because I found through serving that the more you give, the more actually comes back to you. And true fulfillment comes in serving other people. That was a little summary of what my journey has been spiritually and like what is life for. And if you ask me to give you a sentence, it'll be to serve others for a greater purpose other than yourself, bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you will find true joy through any circumstance for your own soul.
Yeah, that's definitely deep words right there, and it's definitely a good way to go about it. It's definitely a humane way to go about it. You know, serving others, and it'll kind of serve yourself in return, right? Because
Yeah.
if you do a good deed, somehow, some way, that's gonna be returned to you. And I really do believe in that. It could be like the minor thing where you're driving, and let's say somebody's turning from the opposite lane, and it's like you let them go first, and you know, like they give you the thank you, and it's like sometimes helping somebody like an old lady cross the street, like little deeds like that, then
Yeah.
that person then goes and helps somebody else because like you did something nice for them. I just feel like
Yeah.
we live in a world where everybody can be really mean nowadays, where in a way it's like kind of being selfish. So it like for example, that person coming into Chase, they gave you hope. They gave you that hope you needed. Sometimes people are down and you may not see it in their face. Sometimes they may be smiling, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
I agree.
And
And it's funny because like going through that, like you said, like letting somebody go, that makes you feel good. Like, oh, you kind of get this like burst of joy when you do something good for somebody else. And that speaks about the power of serving, right? I make it a point when I go out to smile with purpose and to give people compliment. Like if I see somebody that went out of their way to look good and, they're wearing heels and stuff. Like sometimes I'm with my husband, for example, and he's like, "Do you really like?" I'll be like, "Oh, I like your shoes," and they're like, "Oh, thank you." And he'll be like, "Do you really like them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I wouldn't personally wear them, but I think she
mhm,
looks beautiful.
mhm.
And why not? It doesn't cost me anything to say you look beautiful or wow, find something to compliment for the other person and make them smile. That can make a big difference in somebody's day. So little things like that throughout the day um always make me feel good, and it pushes me to do bigger things like my homeschool center and all these things where it's like, wait a minute. I like to find bigger purpose for serving. So the kids are not getting what they deserve in school. So I'm gonna do something where they can get it, where they can have a place where they can get it and really grow into being amazing creatures and not be told who they are by society, anything like that. So it has drove to like a much deeper uh, purpose as well.
Definitely. And homeschooling is definitely a popular thing. It's not the norm, right? Public school, private school is the go-to, but homeschooling, like a lot of positivity comes from it. Like I said, working on the development of these kids individually, where you're seeing what their struggles and the pretty much what their weaknesses are, but you're also seeing like the positives that's coming out of it, like what they're strong at. Maybe their reading level is really good, but they need a little more help in math. So you're able to notice these things a lot quicker than if you're in a classroom with like 40 students, where it's as to where you're only
Yeah.
finding out after they take these exams and they're doing horrible. It's kind of like, oh, okay, they're not getting it. But it's like you're catching it before they take the exam. You're able to correct that. And then when they do take these exams and you prepare for them, depending on the level they're in, then you see more positivity come from it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like a whole different world.
Mm-hmm.
And like it depends also on your teaching philosophy. Like not like a normal parent that has never taught, they know their kid better than anybody, right? So they would be able to adjust to teaching to them. But like for example, as a teacher, I would always like some of my colleagues will be like, oh, I taught this lesson and none of the kids got it. I'm like, well, maybe if you change your approach, because the way that I always taught was, okay, they didn't get it. Did I teach it right? Did I teach it the way that they needed to be taught? Instead of, well, they didn't get it, or, instead of putting the fault on them, it was always on self-reflection. How can I do it better? So kind of like taking the responsibility and not playing the pointing game and victim game. That helped me a lot transitioning into homeschooling. So like to your point of a lot of kids having gaps and things like that, homeschool and like the center that I'm establishing allows me to do a lot of things that otherwise I wouldn't be able to do in school. Like, for example, teaching addition and subtraction, right? Instead of giving them a worksheet, what we do is we set up a lemonade stand and the kids actually add and subtract real money while selling lemonades, which can help them into, okay, how much did we spend in the ingredients that you needed to buy, and how much money did you make? Did you make more than what you spent? So they're really learning a concept as simple as adding and subtracting, but instead of doing it not that there's anything wrong with worksheets, there's a time for that as well, but instead of just sitting there and doing that all the time, we take it into real life, scenarios where they can not just learn to add and subtract, but establishing a business, learning about profits versus costs and all of these things at the same time. So it's a whole different world.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds very complicated, because at the end of the day, you are putting a lot of responsibility on yourself, because it's a private business in the sense of where you're doing your homeschool, but like you have to worry about all the stuff outside of the classroom itself. So you have to worry about teaching these kids, but then you have to worry about getting the establishment, like you said, like the website, getting the website up, getting somebody to do that for you, worrying about preparing the material for the next day while you're doing all that. So it could become very stressful, and I feel like one of your strengths as well is being able to balance a lot, having a child, having to be able to teach these kids, and also like pursuing your personal goals. Like, for example, you're big into fitness, right? So I want you to tell me a little bit about that. That's actually how I met you, through fitness on social media. So how are you able to balance all that, and then just go into how big fitness is in your life?
Yeah, so I know it's like having a lot of different roles in life, right? So I'm a wife, a daughter, friend, mom, just like most people. But I think it's very important to have a strong sense of who you are. And if you, let's say me, Amanda, is not okay, then that's going to affect the mother in me, the wife in me, the daughter in me, the teacher in me, right? So I always try to, like the Bible says, give the same comfort God gives you to others. But it first says the comfort that God gives you, meaning you need to feel that first in order to be able to give it to somebody else. So I always make a point to make sure Amanda, the person, is okay, so that I can fulfill my other obligations, like a mom and a teacher and a wife. So fitness has been a big thing for me in that aspect. It has kept me sane. It's kind of like my little escape where I can push myself to the limits, where I can cry if I need to, where I can, go through the internal battles of, oh, I'm a failure, I couldn't do that too. No, I can do it. It has been a huge part in my life, because it's like my one way to battle things out within myself and then be fine for my roles, if that makes sense. So I've always make it a priority to take care of myself in the fitness aspect, because I think health is huge. Not only fitness is related to how you look, but how you feel, and your mind, your body, your soul, everything is connected. So like, for example, on my fitness journey, it literally started because of mental health. I started to work out because of anxiety issues, and I'm always the person, like I've always had a either all or nothing approach to life. Sometimes that's good, but it can also be a curse. Um, so I'm like, okay, I cannot let this anxiety or whatever is happening in my life at that time. This was 2014,
Okay.
15 when I really started my fitness journey. Um, take a hold of me. It was affecting my job, how I felt, my mood with other people. So I started to work out. And because I gave it my all, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna give it my all. It opened doors for me and for actually like a business opportunity, which allowed me to help other people as well in the fitness industry and teach them that fitness looks different for everybody. And again, it comes to like in fitness, I really honed down on authenticity. And that's what I talked about in my Instagram videos and stories. And when I share my journey, it's like, hey, there's so much information out there when it comes to fitness, the right diet, what you should eat, what you should do that. What works for you? Figure things out and make it work for you. A lot of the stuff with social media, I try to break the barrier of perception because um through fitness and other things, everybody's doing well. Nobody's hurting. Everybody shows their highlights, but what about the dark days and the tough times? That is really what help other people and that can make them connect with you. So through fitness, I became kind of like a diary that I was willing to share with other people about authenticity and the reality of a true journey and the setbacks and getting back up again, and that perception and what things seem like, it's not always reality, if that makes sense.
Definitely. No, I feel like you touched base on a lot of things there.
Yeah,
That's the
I know. When I speak, I tend to like
no, no,
go
it's
everywhere.
perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. I like that's actually my what was my follow up question after like how you got into fitness. It was pretty much like what was the message behind you taking that to social media, because it's one thing to post videos on you like personally working out and just showing people like, hey, this is how you do it, this is how your arm's supposed to turn, or this is how your leg's supposed to be positioned, right? But then when you have a message behind the video, it's much more powerful, especially like when you have inspiring speeches that are inspiring in the background, or just a song that goes perfectly with your message. It touches a lot more people, because a lot of times people aren't there just to say like, oh, how do I look like that? Is more of a, I like the person, I like their morals, I like what they believe in, and it's overall like you said, fitness is a well-being thing. It's a physical thing, but it's also mental. When you're working out, it's easier for you to get up in the morning. It's when you have a schedule, eating, your eating habits are better. What you're buying is healthier. You're keeping in mind, it's like, oh, if I eat that bag of chips, like that's gonna affect me tomorrow, right? So it's definitely a mental game when it comes to fitness, because a lot of times you'll be good for a year or two, and then you'll slack off for like 6 months. You see yourself
Yeah.
back to where you started, or even worse, and then you have to
Yeah.
like start all over again, get your body used to it. Because if you're working out consistently, right, and you're able to run, let's say, 5 miles every day, and then out of nowhere you stop for a year, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be struggling. And if you do, you're going to force yourself. You're probably going to get yourself somewhere to where you can get injured, right?
Yeah.
So how are you able to be consistent with working out and just make that part of your daily routine?
So honestly, my say is anything is better than nothing. Because a lot of the times we think that, oh, if I don't work out for a whole hour and give it my all, then might as well not do it. But it literally, if I can squeeze in between a meeting or whatever, a 15-minute run or workout, that's it. I accomplished that. And it's throughout time, it will add up to big results and, progress. So breaking the myth, I would say, of being okay with things looking different for your journey. So like I have days and weeks sometimes where I fall off, but also understanding what fitness is for me. okay, so did I get to stretch today? Did I get to have a little mindful time for myself? That is fitness, because I'm working on my mind, the wellness of my mind. And understanding also that somebody can be fit but not healthy. They can look good, but are they really healthy? You know, is their cardiovascular health great? Is their mental health in check? How about their emotional health? So for me, fitness is all of that. Um, and even that perception has evolved throughout time. When I started, it was more for like I said, my mind, and then it turned into, well, I want to look this way, and then it's like, wait, no, why do I want to look that way? Because everybody else is, or always checking, like, why am I doing this? And then if once you figure that out, the how will follow. So for me, it's like, why do I work out? So that I can so that I can serve others, so that I can be the best Amanda to fulfill my other roles. So what does that mean? If I cannot work out for an hour today, can I do 15 minutes, jump rope exercise really quick? Or put on some music and dance some Zumba while I'm cleaning in the meantime. So it's about making it work for me instead of me making it, like, instead of forcing it and doing it in a way that fits the society. I don't know how to word it, but it's kind of like the saying of, oh, you should not work for money but make money work for you. It's the same with fitness, you know, like you should incorporate fitness in a way where it works for you and it doesn't feel so forceful, but also where you push yourself and you don't make excuses and you're honest with, which brings me back to self-reflection. Like, am I just being lazy, or do I really have time? The time that I spend scrolling on Instagram, can I do something useful with that? Because if you look at your screen time, I'm sure you have a couple of hours to spare for yourself. So it's also about priorities, having your priorities straight. The why and the how will follow.
I definitely agree. One thing that I want to touch on that you said that's very true from my eyes is a lot of people sometimes they go into fitness to look a certain way, and then through their journey they realize that it's more important maybe towards their health, or it's a mental health thing. Sometimes people hate working out, or they think they do, and when they start working out they love it. They enjoy the reps. They enjoy that soreness they feel afterwards, or whatever the case is. Some people actually enjoy that, and it's crazy to think, right? But everybody has a different experience, and that's something you could look at anything in life, where as to where, like, that's one of the reasons I have a podcast, because I feel like there's so many people in the world, right? But everybody has a different story, everybody has a different path, and everybody's journey is kind of like a movie. So it's kind of like you come onto the podcast and you talk about your life, and everybody's life, everybody comes on the podcast somehow, some way, that could be a movie one day. That can be a book. And that's just how I view it. I try to take everything in your life and just kind of just show how you got from point A to B, right? And one thing I wanted to ask you, are you somebody who likes to manifest? Like, do you feel like you like to manifest your goals and stuff like that?
I am. I wouldn't call it manifest. I would just, I don't really like the word manifestation, because it seems as if, like, you're putting it out there for no purpose, like with no confidence or assurance of what's given it back to you. But it stems back to my faith of, I believe in everything the Bible says, in God, right? And my Lord Jesus Christ. So for me is everything that I do behind it, it's for God's glory, right? So instead of manifestation, yes, I would say the answer is yes, but it's more of like declaration of faith. I declare something, I believe it, and it's done. And having that attitude and confidence makes it happen. You understand? You know what I mean?
No, definitely. It's just kind of sticking to believing in yourself, in the sense of, like, if I want to do that, I'm gonna do it for myself. I'm not just gonna try to manifest it to, like, give myself hope. It's just kind of like, I'm gonna do it to, I know whatever effort I put into it is what I'm gonna get out. in that sense?
Yeah, for example, I'm very careful with words. Manifestation to me is choosing words and actions carefully. Like when I eat something, I'm like, okay, what value is this bringing to me? What am I manifesting or setting myself up for the future by engaging in this action now? You know, repetition of behavior is also manifestation in a way, because if you continuously speak down on yourself, eventually you're going to believe those things. But if you wake up every morning and you speak truth of who you are into the mirror, like I am, for example, in my case, I'm a child of God, I am a warrior, I can do anything I believe in and I set my mind to, eventually with that attitude, everything that I do will happen. Every goal that I want to do will happen. So I think, you know, declaring something done will change your attitude and will make you take actions into getting it. And not expecting for things to happen for yourself, but you changing your mind, your behavior, and taking action so that those things do happen.
Definitely. What's your biggest obstacle right now in your life?
So my biggest obstacle right now is keeping my joy and character through a season of not getting what I want and being in a circumstance where I have no control. And to be specific, right now I'm dealing with a situation of infertility so it's been in my heart. It's one of my heart desires to expand my family for the past 4 years, and I've been actively trying, and it has not happened. And I'm not gonna lie, I would be lying if I told you that has not affected how I felt and motivation and all these things. And everything that I've talked about, right? Like the staying true to yourself and continuing to go and all of that, it's tested when you go through hard journeys that other people, unless that they go through them, won't understand. So for me, the biggest obstacle right now, or for the past, I would say 2 years when it has really hit me, has been really testing out my theory and my proclamation of doing things when you don't feel like doing them. So I'm always big on, like, when anybody starts on a fitness journey, I'm like, yeah, enjoy the motivation, the peak of feeling happy and, yes, I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna eat right. Because when that is done, that's when your character is really tested into, are you still gonna show up when you don't want to? So that has been my biggest obstacle, working through and breaking through the emotions that I'm feeling and still making things happen and still showing up with the same joy and level of energy that I normally would have if everything that I wanted and everything was going my way.
I definitely agree, especially when you have these obstacles that pop up in your life that you don't expect, right? You could sit here and kind of try to plan out your life from beginning to end, but it's never going to end up the same way you planned it, because there's always going to be things that pop up. You don't think about these things. You don't think like, oh, I'm going to have problems with this in the future. And it's kind of like you're saying, you want to face it head on and not let it change your character, right? I think that's what makes us true to ourselves, just knowing who we are, and just valuing the situation to where, there's a lot of people that have it worse than us. And, so don't be so tough on yourself. It's not something you can control,
right.
Not fully control, right? You can do things to try to help the situation, but you can never fully control it. You just kind of tackle it head on. You use your resources, right? So like, you go to doctors, you do your own personal research, and little things like that to see if you can develop it and, get to your end goal. And that's anything in life.
And no, I agree. And also, like, this is one thing that I've always tried to do with, like, my fitness journey. Since I started, I always try to share my struggle because there's beauty in that. And there's a lesson in your struggle, right? Like the Bible says, be joyful through tribulation because it builds perseverance, and perseverance builds character. And I truly believe that. Like when you go through something in life, I like to think of what am I learning right now, and what is this trying to teach me? So one thing that this infertility journey has taught me is patience, and the understanding and the humility that I cannot control everything. So I'm taking it with joy and hope, and I'm using that to inspire others and to sharing my journey to show others like, hey, if you're dealing with this, it's okay. How can we cope with that? Like fitness, the same thing. I took a time in social media, for example, where I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called alopecia areata, where it's like your hair follicles, your body fights the hair follicles and it makes your hair fall off. And at one point, I still have it. I had a bald spot here. If I flip my hair, you would be able to see it. And I share that on social media because people would always be like, oh, wow, everything goes well for you, this and that. And I'm like, no, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, I share sometimes what I want you to see, not what the reality of things is. So I'm like, yeah, I have a full set of hair until I flip it. And then you see the reality. That's how life really is. So in my social media and fitness and just in life, I always share the ugly, or try to a certain extent, right? Because I don't want to be just an open book all over. But what I know can be of value for other people, I share it, even if it's a taboo to share, because there's beauty in struggle. It really builds character, and I really believe that. So embracing that, and again, taking the lessons that life gives you and all of that, and shaping it so that it can benefit you. And it all starts here. It all starts in your mind. Mindset is everything. How you perceive the world, it starts with your mind.
I definitely agree. I feel like the biggest task we have, as far as adulting, is feeling comfortable in your own skin. A lot of people have issues with that, to where they want to look a certain way. They want to be a certain height, a certain weight. They want to be in a certain, how can I say, in a certain group of it. Let's say you want to be part of that elite group, that 1%, you want to be a millionaire, you want to be part of the middle class, like,
yeah.
I just feel like it's the world we live in. It could become very easy to just fall in any of those categories, to where you want to be something or prove something to everybody else, right? But the moment you start failing is the moment you do things for others, right? So you have to be true to yourself, and you have to have a level of comfort. For example, yourself, like, you have to have a level of comfort in yourself and believe in yourself to share these obstacles in your life with social media. There's gonna be thousands of people watching this that you don't know, that are gonna judge you based off that video or photo you're posting, right? Or that message you're putting across. But something about humans, we relate to struggle, because everybody faces struggles. I don't care who you are, like, especially like with money. Like, I don't care how much money you have in the world. I feel like the more money you have, the more problems that come into your life, right?
I agree.
And I'm a big advocate of that. It's just, if you're bringing a lot of money into your life, you have to keep your morality, and realize that it doesn't define you. And the moment you do that, you realize that all the power you have, that you can use that money for, right? You can give back. You can help, people in other countries that don't have the same resources as you. You came from Dominican Republic. You see how different it is in Dominican Republic versus the resources we have in the United States. So, that's one of the reasons you came here, to give yourself a better life, right? So, I just want people to look at it that way. I feel like a lot of times, the more money you make, the more selfish you can become. If you're not true to yourself. And that's kind
No,
of touching with what you said.
yeah, no, I think authenticity, again, it brings back, I'm huge on that because in a world where everybody's literally trying, like, for example, if you look at the trend of like what people say it's beautiful, most women are trying to look a certain way to fit into the description of what beauty, the standard of beauty is nowadays, right? Um, so a lot of women look the same. If you really look at them, they have a lot of the similarities and things like that. But for me, it's like, and I've always been true to myself in the sense of, I don't care what society is doing. I'm gonna stay true to who I am and how I'm beautiful in my own ways. And I've always encouraged other people to do the same. Like when I shared, like you said, struggles, everybody connects to that. And I think it's so true. Like, for example, when I share my alopecia areata journey, when I was having a bad flare up and my hair was falling, and it's very emotional. It might just be like, oh, it's hair, but it could get to the point where like I literally lose all hair in my body, if my autoimmune decides to just go crazy, including eyebrows, eyelashes, all hair. And it for a woman, it can be very emotional. So dealing with that, but by sharing it, it kind of like freed me from that perception, and it allowed me to understand that I wasn't alone. You have no idea how many people message me saying, "Hey, my daughter suffers from this, and I showed her your video, and she was feeling really down because she was just diagnosed, and now she's feeling better." And she's like, oh, and then it started like a whole little community behind the scenes of what shampoo do you use and how do you deal with this, and when your scalp is irritated, what do you do, and like all these things. And I'm like, wow. And here I am in my house thinking that I'm the only one going through this, and kind of like having moments of why me? Oh my God, I'm doing all these good things, and why is this happening? And sharing the struggle and understanding that, like you said, everybody has a story,
It's okay.
gives allows you to not feel alone, because in a world full of people, I feel like loneliness is like a very prominent emotion out there, that it's real. But nobody talks about it, and everybody wants to give the perception that they're okay and they never face any struggles or anything. And people believe that. And the people that do have their struggles behind doors and that are dealing with real issues might resort to extreme measures because they might feel, I'm the only one dealing with this. Why me? And nobody understands. When in reality, everybody is going through their own thing if they actually admitted it and were honest with themselves.
Definitely. Do you believe in like miracles?
I do.
Yeah. Why?
I believe in miracles. And by miracles, let me clarify, you mean like just be healed now? And
Yeah, along that path, because a lot of times you see a lot of cases where doctors are telling people, oh, you have this severe condition and it's not gonna go away. You can't do anything. You just gotta learn how to live with it. And then
yeah.
they do certain things in their life. They everybody's genetic makeup is a little different, right? So they change certain things in their life, and let's say they start working out, whatever the case is, and they change their diet, and then all of a sudden it goes away completely, and it's like, oh, it's a miracle. It went away. Like, where did that come from, right? So
Yeah.
so that's a question I always have for people. It's just kind of like a mixture of faith, reality, and science. Like, where do you kind of fall within those three categories, or do you believe all three work together?
I think in a way they all do work together. However, from a spiritual perspective, right? When I read the Bible, and every time Jesus performed, like the pattern that I see every time Jesus performed a miracle, that he healed somebody from leprosy, or a woman that was bleeding for 12 years, uh, or a blind man, or invalid, like any issue, a dead person. What Jesus would always say is, Go in peace. Your faith has healed you. And every person that was healed and received the miracle stepped out of the crowd and took action to go to Jesus and did something to receive their miracle. So for me, that translates into mindset, right? Are you going to allow the diagnosis or whatever to kill you and to stop you? Mind you, there are certain things like, you're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer or whatever, it's very aggressive. Like, there are certain things that, it's super quick, but even then, how can you use that and with your mind shape it and fight it and become a warrior from it, even if for the world, let's say cancer kills you, or I lose all my hair with alopecia, or my arthritis come back, because I've had autoimmune issues for a while. And for me, it's like the miracle is in the fight, is in the ability to step out and say, I'm not going to let this defeat me. And if this is my end, how can I not go down easy, or how can I make this to inspire others and to win? So that is the miracle for me. But I do believe that God has the power to heal somebody. However, in the humbleness of truly having faith and understanding that God's ways are higher than mine, I have many questions sometimes that I don't understand. Like, why do some people get well, why others don't? Why do bad things happen to kids? These things. I know that God works everything for the good of those who love him, as the Bible says. And I believe that like a miracle, I might be like, for example, there's a story in the Bible, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's Lazarus, a man named Lazarus, that he was very sick, and he was actually a friend of Jesus, and he had two sisters, Mary and Martha, and they had called Jesus to come and see Lazarus because he was dying. He was very ill. And Jesus was a town away, and he said, I'm coming. But he deliberately stayed in that town for 2 days, 2 extra days, on purpose, because he had a plan, right? He knew things that Mary, Lazarus, and Martha didn't know. So when Jesus got to Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, Lazarus was already dead. And Martha said, God, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died. And Jesus said, well, I didn't want to just heal him. I wanted to resurrect him for the sake of you guys to see the power of God. So that story always touches me, because the miracle that Mary and Martha were waiting was a healing, but God had something deeper, and he allowed the pain of death to hit them for the sake of his glory. So that's miracle, to answer your question. That is miracle for me. And I'm okay with what the outcome, like my whole infertility issue, right? I'm okay if I don't have another child, because God's ways are higher than mine. And I understand that. And that comes by truly being okay when God gives and when he takes. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my stand.
No, of course, definitely. It's like I said, it's one of those things where you look at the 3 categories, right? You look at the your spiritual side. You look at what's in front of you, but you also look at it scientific ways. Like, is there any medication you can take to help you out, whatever the case is, right? So it's kind of like you try to have that balance to where, at least in your case, to where you are considering these things, but you put your faith first. And you have to respect that. It's the way you live your life, and there's a lot of people in the world that live their life like that, to where all their decisions are based off their religious views. And then there's people on the opposite side, right, that they refuse to use any of their religious views to make decisions. And that's how we are as humans, as to where you hear all your options, and then you choose the route you want to go down. So So, that's just a random question that I wanted to ask. I know it's a little like touchy because it's kind of like tapping into your religious views and stuff like that. But I feel like people shouldn't be afraid to voice their opinion and
Yeah,
just what they believe in.
and I think, like you said, it's a balance, right? Because if I, let's say, God forbid, get diagnosed with cancer, right? Am I not gonna go take chemo because I'm expecting a miracle from God? No. I probably will and look at my options and see, okay, how can I fight this? But again, it comes down to mindset, right? Not allowing whatever the obstacle, whatever the giant that's there to take you down, but how can you be a warrior and fight it and whatever it is in life. So, yeah, it's like for me, my faith in that sense of miracle and science is, you know, understanding and having the humility that I don't know it all and that I have a creator that his ways are higher than mine. And I have a standard of living that I go by. Um, but also God gives us gifts like um, the ability to come up with inventions and things like that to help us in life. So it's like a balance of
Yeah.
both.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just to clarify, like I grew up in a Catholic home, right? So a lot of these things you are saying I do relate to, but in the podcast sometimes you have to play devil's advocate
Yeah.
to where like you're speaking on the other point of view because there's gonna be a lot of people that are watching the podcast that
Yeah.
aren't part of our religion, right? So you have to be fair to them and just give them points of view because if you sit here and just talk about one side then it's not gonna be there's not gonna be that middle point because you didn't speak on the other side. So I always like to test people when I ask questions of just kind of like meet me in the middle, but just
Yeah.
kind of lean one way more than the other, which creates conversation, right? And that's something that's always gonna be big in life. There's always gonna be talks on religion. There's always gonna be talk on your faith.
Yeah.
There's always gonna be talk on your purpose, right? So that's something that I personally, maybe want to incorporate a little more into the podcast just because it is interesting. Because to give you a little background, like, I do come from a religious family, but I also work within science. So, I do the whole scientific work and all that stuff, right? So that's just something that I personally just like to hear people's opinion on. I can't sit here and say I have the right answer, but
Right.
I don't feel like there has to be a right answer. I think it just comes down to what you personally believe, but also what's good for humanity as a whole, right?
Yeah. And I think something that has been lost nowadays is the ability to converse, right? To having a conversation and just like listening, and being open, like being humble and knowing that you don't know everything and going into every conversation like with the attitude of what can I learn from you today, which opens your ears and allows you to listen and really try to understand why that person thinks that way, and what experiences or what might have shaped their beliefs. And I think there's like beauty in our differences and the ability to exchange ideas. But nowadays it's hard. It's
Definitely.
hard to engage. Yeah.
I definitely agree. But, it's like I said, it's always something that, people are going to be very passionate about. And it's always going to be double sided, unfortunately, like,
Yeah.
which you just have to make sure everybody's cordial and they go about it the right way. But I do want to talk a little bit about social media.
Okay.
I feel like it seems like recently you took a little break, right? Which is good. I definitely am a big advocate of taking breaks when needed. At the end of the day, it's your personal social media, so nobody should be telling you when to post or what to post or how to post, right? So do you want to speak on that a little bit of just what your current status is with social media and your future goals with it?
Yeah. So I always go through like like I mentioned before, I'm always careful with what I take in, right? So everything what I eat, the people that I engage with, the music that I listen to, the shows that I watch, what value do they give me? Am I just watching a reality TV show and doing, not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me personally, what is this teaching me? What am I getting from this? If it doesn't do anything for me and it doesn't allow me to grow or, question anything in any way, not of value. So I won't eat it. I won't listen to it. Very different in that aspect. So I always, what's the nutritional value of this for me? That's one way that I look. So with social media, I am not going to lie. A lot of the times I'm like, okay, I'm okay in social media as long as I am a provider of content. The moment that I become a consumer and I allowed my time to go and get lost in the highlights and the perception of what the world is trying to sell, I take a break from it because it affects my mental health. And I've always dealt with anxiety issues. And when I find myself anxious and cannot find the root of what is causing my anxiety to flare up, I always let go of social media for some time. Because it's very easy, as strong as anybody is, I do not care who it is. You can easily fall into the trap of comparison. You can easily fall into the trap of, wow, everybody has things together but me. You can easily fall into all of those things that can eat at you. Subconscious, even if you don't know that it's happening, but eventually it can hit you. I always take a break. So when I feel like I can give value to others, in a raw, authentic way, then I hop back on and I start sharing as if I never left. But it's been a while where I felt, I also don't force social media. I literally share when I truly want to share something, or if I feel like it can be of value to somebody else. But I haven't had that drive lately to be on social media. And perhaps I have all the content and I'm like, I need to get to it. And I record things and I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this video and this. So I'm still doing that. But I haven't been active on social media because I'm not feeling it. And I don't force it. For all the reasons that I mentioned previously. I'm not sure if you can relate to it because you're on social media a lot, but social media can be a very sensitive path to walk down on,
Yeah, like I wanna stay on like what you said about being a consumer. I feel like sometimes you're a consumer, you don't even realize it. These search engines are created to the point to where if you watch a certain video and they see you're constantly watching videos within that page, they kind of know what niche you're in, and they direct more videos away because it's there's a business side to it. There's certain products they want you to buy. Nowadays you search something on your phone and an hour later you're on Instagram or something and you see that same exact product ad for it, right? So it's just like life, right? It's about you being true to yourself and just realizing what the purpose of that in front of you is, right? Is it a bad message versus a good message? And I think that's what makes it so tricky. Is when you're looking at necessarily, let's say, somebody that is younger and they're consuming content, it will affect them much more differently than if you're an adult and you kind of have an idea of how you live your life, right? But even as adults, we go through difficulties. One question I have for you is, when you did step away from social media, what progress do you see, or what changes do you make in your life? Because there's a lot of people that have tried to disconnect, but they can't truly. Sometimes they'll like take 2-3 days away and then they go crazy, like, oh, I gotta go back. I'm missing the feed, because a lot of times you go to your Instagram and stuff like that, or any social media in general, right, to see how your friends are doing, how your family are doing, to update everybody else in your life, right? That's one of the positives from it, right? But how are you able to disconnect knowing that you're going to be away from that?
So this is where like self-control and discipline
Hmm.
falls in, because I delete the app completely. I delete the app from my phone. I don't deactivate the whole account because I know I have a purpose for it and I want to share eventually more. But when I'm taking a break, I literally delete it. Um, and I don't go on it. I set timers also. Sometimes I don't just delete it, but I'm like, oh, I'm only gonna go on it for 30 minutes a day. And I set a timer. Once the timer hits, that's it. I know I hit my time and I gotta respect it. One thing that I'm big on that helps me with stepping away with social media is if you cannot keep your own word to yourself, then what good is your word to others, right? If you say, I'm not gonna go on social media today, Amanda. Um, and I cannot fight the urge because it could be a true addiction. Like you're just like an automatic thing that you just do.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, I cannot even keep it to myself. So how can my word be of value to somebody else when I say I'm gonna do something for me and I don't do it? So keeping that in mind, um, and make taking note of what happens when I'm not on it. And I always notice my productivity skyrockets. Like
Yeah.
my focus goes off the roof. And also it allows me to think more, because one thing that I'm big on is, do I believe this, or have I been told to believe this, or have I seen this? That has anything shaped my opinion on this? It has allowed me to really clarify my thoughts and who I am and what I believe in on my own without the influence of the media and all these other memes or whatever it is out there. So noting my productivity increases, my focus increases. Living in the now is more powerful also when you're not on social media, because instead of worrying about, oh, let me take a picture of my dinner so that I can post
Yeah.
it, you're literally enjoying the person that you're having dinner with more, and you're living in the now, which is honestly all we have. The later is a hope, and tomorrow as well. So my now becomes more real, more
Hmm.
prominent, more colorful. My productivity goes high. And I notice that almost instantly. Um, Not that I'm not productive when I'm on it, but it increases significantly because social media does takes a good chunk of your time. Crazy how fast you can lose 2, 3 hours on it.
Hmm.
Um, so that helps me being aware of what happens in the little moments that I'm not on it, and also staying true to what I said I was gonna do.
Definitely. Yeah, it was one of those things where social media is evolving and is gonna continue to evolve. Like now there's like shorts and like what's going on with TikTok. If anything's more, you're consuming it at a faster rate. So now you're there longer, right? Like you'll be on watch a couple videos and then an hour later you're like, holy crap, I've been here for an hour, I've been here for 2 hours just watching, right? So
Yeah.
I understand why you choose to disconnect, and like you said, you always have the option to go back. It's not like you're completely eliminating it. I just feel like you have to use your resources as far as knowing when you need it versus you don't, right? And
Right.
not letting it consume your life completely. For me specifically, like I use social media to promote, my podcast, to promote everything, right? So it's something positive coming from it, right? But like you said, if you're at dinner or something like that, yeah, there's a time where you have to put your phone away. Whatever is on your phone is not gonna go away. If somebody sends you a message, if somebody is trying to reach out to you, you're gonna get back to them at some point.
And it comes down to like there's nothing wrong with using it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like being entertained, but it's like, are you controlling it or is it controlling you? And it comes down to that. Like, who has control? Is it
Mm-hmm.
you, or do they got you? So when I start to lose sense of like I need to be on it, or I find myself like even posting something and then like refreshing and seeing like what 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 has how has it been received and stuff, I'm like, okay, time to let it go. Like,
Definitely.
no more. So being aware and honest with yourself, like, being able to admit, am I giving in too much? Like being able to recognize that so that you can always keep control instead of allowing it to control you.
Definitely. So let me ask, thank you for sharing that, of course. I feel like you've been an open book throughout this podcast, and that's amazing. That's what I hope for, because the moment you're open book, that's when the real messages come out, right? So
Yeah.
one thing and this podcast that we like to do is we want to bring everybody back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want you to set a couple of goals for yourself, maybe as to where when you come back, we could touch base on. So
Okay.
what are some things that we should expect in your future that, within a year or two, when you come back and speak to us, we'll be able to touch base on?
So absolutely my homeschool center.
Mm-hmm.
So I am now in the process of setting a different location. So I have 12 students now, let's say. I wouldn't even say a year. I want to say 4, 6 months from now, I want to double that, and have one more or two person more added to my team. So absolutely that. My homeschool center is like my main focus right now. So that is one thing that I would say you would see my focus on in the most changes in my life, and what I expect to see in the near future, and also being back on Instagram and setting my routine and sharing my fitness journey, where I am now. It's something else that I want to do again and get back into doing what I was, because
Mm-hmm.
posting and doing all of that does truly make me happy, and see, like being able to connect with people, um and seeing how like my struggles can help them in any way, that makes me happy. So I that's another thing. So expect to see more of me on social media and
Nice.
my homeschool center. Um, and maybe positive news in my infertility journey. Who knows?
Yes, yes, definitely
Yes,
expand that family, right?
yes.
But as far as like your social media stuff like that, I also want you to like plug your website as well for your business. So let me know your business website and also your social media so people could go follow you.
Yeah, so my social media is Amanda Ricardo, X3. That's my personal social media where I share my fitness, personal life, struggles, all of that. And then my business is blessedbee.org. That's my website. People can see what I'm about. A few of my students in one of our little pod sessions. And I started the Blessed Bee social media, which is Blessed Bees with an S at the end. But it's not fully up and running yet, but they can get a glimpse of some of the things that we do there too. Yeah.
Definitely. And what's like the age group that you guys work with?
Yeah. So I personally do age 5 to 8. But I'm hiring and looking right now in the process to fit preschoolers and higher elementary.
No, definitely, yeah. It's like you said, it's a work in progress, but you gotta
Yeah,
start somewhere, right? And
yeah.
like clearly based off this podcast, you can see like how mature you are as a person, and you're clearly
Right.
somebody that could be trusted with kids. So I hope somebody could take this podcast, if you're in the local area, and just kind of direct your kids her way. You want them in
Yeah.
good hands, especially if you don't want them in like public school, and you want more of a private scenario, right? So once again, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm excited to have you back on in the future. I feel like you're already exceeding in your goals in life, and you're just going to continue to go down that path because it's the type of person you are. Um, I want to give a shout out to, you ain't get to really speak on your family, but, you guys are a beautiful family. I feel like, your kid is going to be heading in the right direction, having you as a mother, and you using
Right.
the resources you got from your parents and stuff growing up. So, and also I'm Dominican too, so it's nice to see somebody that is coming from the same environment as you. I grew up in New York. I'm Dominican. I did grow up. I was born in the U.S., but I do go to DR. I do have a lot of family there, so I know the culture very well.
I didn't know that. That was great. No, thank you
Yeah.
for having me. Um,
Hmm.
it was nice. I know I go all over the place, but I just have so much to say with such little time all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, um, yeah, so thank you for having me. It was a very fulfilling conversation with you, and to be able to share a little bit more of what I've gone through and me. So, yeah.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, there's so much to talk about. There's so
Yeah.
much we didn't get to touch base on. So, I'm definitely gonna have my list of questions for when you come back because, now I know how the type of person you are, and now I'm able to expand that to more deeper questions, right? And that's what life is. It's just about answering questions and, trying to figure out what the next big thing is, right? But I do want to give a shout out to Reebok. It's our sponsor for the podcast, our affiliate program, right? And I'll have a link down below if you guys want to go and get your merch, and your athletic gear, stuff like that. So the promotion code that I used on the last podcast is probably over by the time this podcast comes out. So I'll have a new promotion code. Just check in down in the description. But I want to thank you for coming on, Amanda. Any last words for the viewers?
No, thank you for having me. And I think it's great what you're doing, where
Yeah.
you get to just really have conversations with people
Hmm.
um, about real things in life and like their walk in life. I think that's great. So I commend you and I encourage you to keep going and to not stop and, keep doing your thing because it's very inspirational and it can really motivate people. And maybe you have the right person that says the right thing that somebody needs to hear at that time, and it can like spark a change or motivate them to take action and do something. So I think that's wonderful. So I encourage you to keep going. And yeah, it was great to be here. I had a good time.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. So thank you for tuning in to Flip Talk Podcast, episode 13. We had our guest Amanda and myself, Kudos, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Bye.